Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to also apologize for coming late. I was also preparing for the same. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 16 August 2024. The report of the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the Environmental Management and Coordination Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 66 of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order. We have two responses to statements. Yes. Dr. Mutunga on the statement by Honorable Geoffrey Ruku.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to read the statement by on the request by Honorable Geoffrey Ruku, MP. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44-2C, the Honorable Geoffrey Ruku, MP, requested for a statement on the 21st of March 2024 regarding the continuing sale of Roundup by Mbeya East Africa Limited. The Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development responded as follows to the issues raised in that particular statement. Honorable Speaker, under the first question was, under what circumstances has Mbeya East Africa continued to sell Roundup in the country for use in weed control, despite the fact that Roundup, despite Roundup being scientifically linked to cancer? The response, Honorable Speaker, is that Roundup is a glyphosate-based product that has been widely used worldwide as a herbicide to control weeds for several decades. Honorable Speaker, the statement further reads that Mbeya East Africa has continued to sell Roundup in the country because it is registered and approved by the Pest Control Products Board for use as post-emergent systemic herbicide for the control of weed in various crops. Though Roundup and other glyphosates-based products have been linked to cancer, several organizations like the Pest Control Products Board, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and the World Health Organization have undertaken studies on glyphosate-based products. In 2019, PCBB and a team of scientists reviewed scientific studies on glyphosate and established that there was no evidence linking the glyphosate-based products to cancer in human beings. Honorable Speaker, in 2016, FAO and World Health Organizations undertook pesticide risk assessment of glyphosate-based products and established that glyphosate is unlikely to pose carcinogenic risk to the human beings. The second issue that Honorable Ruku raised is what studies and findings are Mbeya East Africa documented and are submitted to the relevant government agencies on the effects of Roundup, including profiled cases of harmful exposure, the mitigation measures, and the compensation for extended, the compensation so far extended to victims of carcinogenic effects on the Roundup in Kenya. The response, Honorable Speaker, goes as follows. The assessment of human risk inquiries, identification, compilation, and integration of information on the health hazards of our chemical, human exposure to the chemical, and relationship among exposure dose, and adverse effects. As with all pest and pest control products, Bayer East Africa Limited submitted scientific data packages supporting the quality and safety of Roundup as required by the law. The data packages included purity and impurity profile, identity, that is a chemistry, toxicology, which is acute and long-term studies, and which incorporated acute and long-term studies, the effects on the environment and the beneficial organisms, efficacy data, and also residual data. There have been no reported cases directly linking the use of glyphosate-based products to cancer in Kenya, based on the information provided to Pest Control Products Board by the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health is represented in the Pest Control Products Board of Directors as required by Section 5.2 of the Pest Control Products Board Act, CAP 346 of 1982, and in the Technical and Registration Committee of the board. The third issue that the Honorable Ruku raised was why has the Pest Control Products Board not banned the use of Roundup in the country, and when does the government intend to act so as to protect Kenyans from the risk of cancer resulting from continued use or exposure to Roundup? Honorable Speaker, PCPB has registered and approved the use of Roundup as post-emergent systemic herbicide for the control of weeds in the country. The decision of not banning the use of Roundup was informed by the review of the scientific information on the glyphosate, which indicated that there is no evidence showing that continued use of Roundup exposes human beings to cancer when used according to the label instructions. Honourable Speaker, the government of Kenya, through PCPB, is committed to protecting Kenyans and the environment for posterity through science-based decision-making. PCPB will take appropriate measures as required by law if they get any new information on Roundup. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. That is the response.
Thank you, Honourable Mutunga. Honourable Ruku.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. I read the answer and also have listened to Honorable Mutunga. And Mr. Speaker, the manner in which this matter was taken by the Minister, that the Bayer International has been fined by the government in where agriculture is a main form of economic activity. Mr. Speaker, I would propose that the Minister of Agriculture to appear in front of the Committee of Agriculture, and I be summoned so that I can come and table the evidence which I have, the scientific journals which I have, to prove that whatever Bayer International or Bayer East Africa is selling in Kenya market as carcinogenic elements which are causing cancer in the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Mutunga and the member who filed the question. The Deputy Speaker brought a motion to this House, a petition rather, on the same issue. Mutunga, has it come to your committee? No, it goes to the Public Petitions Committee, alleging exactly the same things. I would advise Honorable Ruku that you go and prosecute your issue before the Committee on Public Petitions, so that when the outcome comes to the House, then you can further debate, and if you agree with the findings, whatever they will be, then we can follow up with implementation. Yes, Deputy Speaker. Give the Deputy Speaker. Yes.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I think on this issue of the petition on pesticide, we have on many occasions asked the chairperson, Honorable Wanjala, to follow up on it. So it's the Committee on Implementation are the ones who have failed to act. Thank you.
Is Raphael Wanjala in the House? Majority Leader Owen, can you bring it to the attention? Let me hear Bukose first.
Honorable Speaker, I had actually put on a point of order when I had the response from the Chair of Agriculture. And he did not go into mentioning issues about carcinogenic, because in many of the articles that have been written, lymphomas are said to be developed within 2 years of exposure of high doses of Roundup, which is a glycophosphate. Therefore, I think it would have been important if I think the person who gave him the response did not do proper research, and I would have said that that response was actually unsatisfactory, because it seems to be business-oriented or business-driven and is not addressing the health issues as pertains to the issue which was raised by the member from Mbeere North. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I think we need a I know as much as Honorable Wanjala should be able to respond about implementation, but I think this House needs a better response in terms of, because Kenyans continue on daily basis being exposed to this Roundup. And if we don't address it, then as a House, we'll actually be failing our responsibilities.
Rachel Nyamai.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to also make a comment on this matter. Honorable Speaker, I have listened to your deputy, the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Boss, talking about this matter of agricultural chemicals causing cancer. And I've also listened to the response that has been brought by the Chair Agriculture. From Mbeere, the Honorable Ruku, who almost said that he was not satisfied because he says that he would like to engage further. So, Honorable Speaker, I would like also to appeal to you that this matter of using agricultural products that are causing cancer to be handled with the urgency that it deserves. So I am raising, Honorable Speaker, to say that this is a matter that we cannot wait anymore. Our people are suffering.
Agricultural community and the level of chemical. Mr. Speaker, where there is very high usage of Roundup, Mr. Speaker, there is a very high level of miscarriage by our mothers. Mr. Speaker, as I said, the level of prevalence of cancer, particularly associated with throat cancer. Mr. Speaker, all what Mr. Loko has said is that these chemicals, by Bayer Chemicals, Mr. Speaker, should be banned from the market. Mr. Speaker, I join those that the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Health to move with speed so that they determine and request that action be taken. Thank you.
Chairman of the committee, Dr. Mutunga.
Thank you.
The Deputy Speaker has something to say first.
Okay.
Take your seat. Yes, the Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm sorry that I have taken a second bite at this topic, but it's something that's very dear to my heart. I think the issue of pesticides, or even Roundup, as he says, is a big problem in the country. It is known by all levels of government, the challenge. There has been a document called the Pesticide Atlas that was developed by 20 scientists from the University of Nairobi. It has been confirmed that 267 pesticides that are banned in Europe and America are in use in Kenya. The Pest Products Control Board is the one that is supposed to make the list of approved pesticides. Those banned pesticides are still on our list. So the offenders here now are the Pest Products Control Board members. I have written a petition requesting for their removal from office to the Agriculture Minister because they have failed and endangered Kenyans' lives. Also, some of those products, like you said, Roundup. In fact, Roundup is no longer called Roundup. Roundup is now still being sold with the same ingredients, but with a different trade name in Kenya as we speak. In fact, the biggest case that was in the United States, the courts there awarded a farmer who had developed cancer as a result of using Roundup, and he was paid $250 million 20 years ago. That is how seriously it is taken in the US. Unfortunately for us, the United States under Doe companies and Bayer under Europe are allowed by their countries to manufacture the pesticides, but not for use in their country, but for export to a country that is careless and foolish enough to admit them. And Kenya is one of those countries. So the failure here, and that is why when I asked Honorable Wanjala why he has not acted on my petition as recommended by the Health Committee, because the resolution on my petition by the Health Committee said that the Pest Products Control Board should take measures to remove the products from the market. They have failed to do so. So the Implementation Committee should actually summon the Pest Products Control Board. They should summon the Minister of Agriculture. But the issue here is the people who are being fought, the agrochemical companies, are extremely powerful. During the time when I was rallying the country against these products, I was threatened with death. So it is big money. And if we don't act as parliament, we continue to kill our people because it is confirmed that they cause cancer and other non-communicable diseases. And when you talk to the pest, I did visit the Pest Products Control Board. I went to their offices and begged them and told them, please remove these products off the market. What they said to me is that they need to do more research. And I asked them that you do not require to do extra research because when something has already been put in a peer-reviewed medical journal, it is a notice to all doctors across the world. Similarly, and I gave them the example of certain cough syrups were said to cause chest problems for children. The Pharmaceutical Board of Kenya did not do another research. They simply stopped dispensing that medicine. Similarly, when certain hormone replacement therapies were found to cause cervical cancer and breast cancer on women, the gynecologists of Kenya stopped prescribing it. They did not do more research. So I beg the members of parliament to take this more seriously, because in as much as we are trying to invest in cancer treatment, we are also allowing the cancer to come in. And these countries have us where they want. They sell us the cancer-causing pesticides, and then they sell us the cancer drugs to treat our people and the equipment for treating them. So it is actually Parliament that has failed the people of Kenya. The Minister of Agriculture has failed the people of Kenya. And I have informed him, the former minister. I have also the Pest Products Control Board are the biggest criminals in this. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and Parliament must set up on this issue.
Yes, Ruku.
Mr. Speaker, this House has failed the people.
Order, members. Order. Members on their feet, take your seats. You can engage while seated. You don't have to. Take your seats and lower the conversation levels. Ruku?
Mr. Speaker, when I read the statement, I was almost crying. To the extent which
that is not what you say. That's not what you said a few minutes ago.
Yes.
But go on.
I want to echo what Deputy Speaker said, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Agriculture has failed totally to take that request for statement seriously. And I want to beseech you, Mr. Speaker, to use the powers of this seat to ensure the Minister of Agriculture, and all the bodies who are responsible as far as the pesticide control is concerned in the Republic of Kenya, to ensure that Kenyans will not continue suffering when we have institutions which are supposed to take care of them. That Bayer East Africa may be stopped with immediate effect. The sale of Roundup and any other chemical or pesticide which is causing cancer to the majority of the people who are in farming, whether in potatoes, whether in coffee, whether in tea, whether in mogoka, all the crops which are using Roundup, Mr. Speaker, they are affecting even the fishery, because there is scientific evidence that when you spray Roundup in the soil, when it rains, it finds its way into our rivers, it finds its way into our lakes, and even the fish farming is affected by this chemical. I think, Mr. Speaker, we cannot admit that report. I pray that the committee do a good job. The committee must be able to do a good job and prevent the people of the Republic of Kenya. The government of Kenya is using a lot of money in treatment of cancer. We have seen even the treatment of cancer has become a touristic activity, where many Kenyans are going to India and other countries in the hope of
you made your
treated.
point.
Mr. Speaker, we take this matter very seriously. Thank you.
Women Rep Nairobi on the same issue. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute. Mr. Speaker, in the last Parliament, I was in the Health Committee, and Honourable Gladys, our Deputy Speaker, Gladys Sholay, came to actually talk to us about the dangers of pesticides to our food and the continued use of them and how they impact our health. We are what we eat. We are eating to die, not to live, if we continue having these products in the market. I mean, you hear countries that have products that they discover are not good being recalled and being removed from all the shelves. It's such a shame that we're discussing this thing and the people who trade on these products have such impunity. I think this is not just the agriculture committee or ministry. This is health, this is agriculture, this is also economic trade. We cannot trade with harmful products in our country that continue to harm our people. So I think it's important that we have a multi-sectorial approach to this, and we ensure that we also do a lot of civic education so that the public out there knows that these products that they're using in their farms will not be able to actually help them in the long term. It actually could end up killing them and killing future generations, because once it's in the soil, we did a study at the Pan-African Parliament on soil management, and that's a model law that we're coming up with. You find that some of these products that we're putting in our soil will take generations for us to actually get our soil back to its standard. So I think it's important that we really take this seriously. We educate the public that these products really should be removed from the shelves. No one should buy them. And I really hope that the Gen Zs are listening, because really they're the young generation that are going to be eating these products as well. And if if most of the generation, the millennials right now in the fossils, have already gotten cancer because of consuming contaminated foods, we don't want the Gen Zs and the next generation to actually follow suit. So it's important for us as government to really take this serious. Pesticides are killing us. They are eroding our soil, and now we are eating to die, not to live. So I really pray that we will have a solution that actually safeguards. And we should also be looking for compensation. Most of these companies are rich companies, and they've exploited Africa. These products are banned in other European countries. They are actually dumping them to us at low cost prices. People are making astronomical profits. I really believe that heads should turn, and we should be begging for compensation for the people that have gotten cancer in our country because of consuming foods that have been grown with these products. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mama Zamzam.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze pia kuunga dada yangu Mheshimiwa Gladys Sholay. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, kina mama wengi wanaugua, na hata si kina mama, Kenya watu wengi sana wanaugua magonjwa ya saratani kwa sababu ya yale madawa ambayo yanatumiwa katika mashamba yetu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na sisi tusipokuwa makini, Mheshimiwa Spika, hospitali zetu zitajaa kila siku wagonjwa wa kansa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni dhahiri kuwa kuna watu wamejitokeza kwa kutaka kuweza kuvuna haraka haraka, Mheshimiwa Spika, wanatumia madawa ambayo yanaingizwa hapa kinyume na sheria, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuweza kunyunyizia mimea ndani ya mashamba, Mheshimiwa Spika, na inakuwa inadhuru sana wananchi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi naomba, dada yangu Mheshimiwa Sholei amezungumza na ilikuwa mjadala tulivyoanza bunge, nakumbuka akileta. Naomba tuweze kumpa support, tuweze kuweka taifa ambalo litakuwa huru na maradhi ya kansa, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kuweza kupigia pondo huu mjadala na kuhakikisha kuwa tunaweka sheria haya madawa yanayotolewa mataifa mengine yakiletwa hapa Kenya kuweza kunyunyizia mashamba yetu, Mheshimiwa Spika, tuweze kuyapinga na kuweza kuyazuia, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na wale ambao wanaleta pia wachukuliwe hatua, waweze kufungwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Asante sana dadangu Sholei. Umekumbuka kina mama wengi wanalia, hatujui nini ilikuwa inatuuma. Ukiingia ndani ya mabucha wakati mwingine unapata hata kuku anadungwa zile sindani zile. Kuku alikuwa mwembamba anafura, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mtu anaenjoy lakini hajui anakula kitu gani, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo mimi nakusupport na nasema huu mjadala na hiyo bili yako iweze kupita na iwe sheria. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Dr. Mutunga, you can hear the outrage. It clearly points. Take your seat, Dr. Mutunga, shortly. Dr. Mutunga, order, honorable members. Order. Order, members. Dr. Mutunga, go ahead. Give him the mic.
Honourable Speaker, I have heard my colleagues speak on this particular issue. And Honourable Speaker, when we got this request for statement from the Honourable Ruku, we forwarded the request to the ministry. We did not ask the ministry to come to us so that we may ask straight questions on the details. Honourable Speaker, according to this statement, the safety control is by the PCPB, Pest Control Products Board. And the Pest Control Products Board has got membership from the Ministry of Health, besides those who are engaged in checking out what comes into Kenya and what is used here. Honourable Speaker, most of the pesticides and the herbicides, and the Roundup is a herbicide, it's not a pesticide. It's not supposed to kill the pests. It's supposed to kill weeds. It's therefore supposed to kill the plants. Most of them are dangerous. And on the level, on the branding of most herbicides and pesticides, those that are dangerous are labeled. There is a label that is put on top of that on the branding. And then there is the need for safe use of pesticides and herbicides. There is a prescription, Honourable Speaker, on even how somebody should be dressed. There's a protective kit that is invented to protect people as they use these pesticides and herbicides.
Dr. Mutunga.
Honourable Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying this. It is sad that we could have pesticides or herbicides in this country that are carcinogenic. This report says glyphosates are not carcinogenic. In case there is no report. But I'm happy to hear that my colleague, Honourable Broko, has evidence. I'm also very happy to hear that there are refereed journals which have cited the dangers in some of the glyphosates. Honourable Speaker, I'll be very happy if you could form a joint committee. And this joint committee should have the Ministry of Health, the Health Committee, the Committee on Agriculture, and the Committee on petitions, so that we can ask straight questions on what kind of evidence do they have, and then present the evidence that we have as members of Parliament in order to protect the Kenyans. Honourable Speaker, we should not take the fact that people did not protect themselves as an answer. What we should take is that, is there any evidence that it is causing cancer in our midst? And is there evidence that is actually banned in those other countries? And if it is, Honourable Speaker, we should propose strongly that it is banned in this particular country. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Order, honourable members. Honourable Mutunga, the Deputy Speaker has clearly articulated this issue. She brought a petition. The outcome was positive. She's quoted international academic intellectual journals to that effect. We also know as a fact that these chemicals are not sold in the countries that manufacture them. So you can't ask for any further evidence. Just get to the agencies of government that allow these chemicals to come in, including Kenya Bureau of Standards and the other agencies, so that you engage them and bring back a very comprehensive report after the recess that is coming in 2 weeks, so that we can be, as a house, be able to assist the people you represent. You've heard Rindikiri from your region saying what he said, and many other members. So get down to business, get the Committee of Implementation, look at the report from the Petitions Committee, and you'll bring the response after the next recess. Honourable members, yes, Ruku?
I request, Mr. Speaker, I be invited to that committee so that I can table the evidence which I have. Thank you.
Even if you are not invited, go there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, allow me to acknowledge the following. I don't know if they are still in the gallery, in the public gallery. AIC Messis Primary School from Keses was in Gishu. St. Joseph's International Science School from Ainamoi was in Gishu. Galma Primary School, Garsen, Tana River. Chebanganga Secondary School from Konoin, Bomet. Kataret JSS from Chepalungu, Bomet. If they have already left, we still welcome them nonetheless. They have been in our gallery. Honourable members, also seated in the Speaker's gallery are students from Starehe Boys Center and School. The students are in Parliament for a period of 2 weeks on a voluntary service scheme. This gives the young men an opportunity to give back to the community by providing voluntary service to various organizations during the school holidays. On my behalf and on behalf of the National Assembly, I welcome those students to Parliament and wish them a positive experience in their service to the nation. You may take your seats, students. Next order. Yeah? Yes. Yes. We have another. Tongoyo, are you ready with the statement on security? Go ahead. This is a statement requested by the Honorable Robert Mbui.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And as you had already said, Honorable Speaker, this is a response to a statement by Member of Parliament for Kathiani constituency regarding the issues of the National PISRA, National Security Regulatory Authority. And the Honorable Member had sought to be about 6 issues. And I quickly just want to, for the purposes of record, 1, the member wanted to know the constitutionality of the legal notice issued by the Private Security Regulatory Authority on 10th June 2024 relating to the minimum wage. 2, the step which will be taken to revoke the legal notice if found illegality issued, and the measures put in place to ensure adherence with the relevant laws while exercising the said directive. 3, the details of the process leading to the determination of minimum wage. 4, whether the powers and the function of the Private Security Regulatory Authority under Section 9 of the Private Security Regulatory Authority Act 2016 also include setting the minimum wage, and whether the powers vested in the authority under Section 32 contemplate non-compliance with the minimum wage as a ground for cancellation of certificate of registration or registration of the security firms. And of course, the reason for failure by the authority to resubmit revised regulations envisaged under the Private Security Regulatory Authority Act 2016. Honorable Speaker, and I want to respond as follows. 1, Honorable Speaker, on 10th June 2024, the Private Security Regulatory Authority issued a public notice published as legal notice number PSRA 002-2024, directing all private security services provided users, prospective users, and representative of the users for the private security services to submit to it legal commitment to comply with a set minimum wage for private security guards. The said legal notice has been a subject of court cases, namely Nairobi ELRC GRE 043/2023, Protective and Safety Association of Kenya versus Private Security Regulatory Authority, and Fazul Muhammad and 3 others, and Nairobi ELRC petition number E011/2024, John Kipkorir and Private Security Regulatory Authority, and 4 others. The principle of sub judice sub judice militates against commenting on the issues at hand. It suffices to state that what the authority issued as a notice was not supposed to be strictly interpreted as a legal notice, but an administrative action to guide for the industry players. This was an ordinary public notice intended to be acted upon by affecting parties. The form of impugnated notice should not be interpreted so as to negate its intention, which was clear to all parties concerned. Honorable Speaker, should the court find that the said notice is illegal, it will automatically lose its validity, rendering it null and void. No further action on the part of the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and National Administration will be needed. Question number 3. On question number 3, Honorable Speaker, under the Labor Institution Act 2007, wage councils are responsible for recommending to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor the minimum wage payable to workers and their conditions of employment. Wage councils are tripartite bodies comprising workers, employers, and independent experts. The National Labor Board, which is a creature of the Act, is entrusted with the responsibility of advising the Cabinet Secretary for Labor on appointment of the Wage Council. Once the Wage Council makes the recommendation on the minimum wage and the condition of employment, the Cabinet Secretary may approve the same, after which a wage order is issued through the Kenya Gazette. What the authority did, Mr. Speaker, was not to determine the minimum wage for private security guards, but interpret the relevant wage order, which is the Regulation of Wages, Amendment Order 2022, Legal Notice Number 125 of 1st July 2022, as issued by the Cabinet Secretary for Labor. The order came into effect on 1st May 2022 and was the basis for arriving at the contested figures. Regarding question number 4, Honorable Speaker, as noticed above, the power and responsibility of setting the minimum wage is vested upon the Minister for Labor after recommendation of the Wage Council. Under the said section, the authority is mandated to provide and set standards that ensure compliance with the minimum wage regulation. The authority acted in accordance with the section when it required employers of the private security guards to give legal commitment that they will pay them the minimum wage as per the said wage order. In the process of setting minimum wage, the authority is a stakeholder and may make a recommendation to the Wage Council. These recommendations are to be considered alongside those of other many industry players. The Ministry of Interior and National Administration and as the Salary and Remuneration Commission has no role to play in the determination of wage for the private security guard. Their role, if any, are limited to state public offices. On the last, number 5, Honorable Speaker, under Section 32 of the Act, the authority is mandated to prescribe condition when issuing certificates of registration. An example of the condition is compliance with the minimum wage. Should it be breached, it will be grounded for cancellation of the certificate of registration. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, on the statement, the previous regulation, that is Private Security Regulation 2019, were annulled by the National Assembly because no effective public participation was, and I hope the Honorable Member Robert is listening, public participation was done. The authority was developed new regulation which are currently undergoing public participation. This process has been hampered by lack of funds, hence the delay in submitting them. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, the authority did its best to interpret the said wage order. The commitment to pay the minimum wage was within the law. The public notice issued should not be interpreted as a legal notice and a strict sense of the word. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Signed by Dr. Raibon Omolo. Honorable Speaker, kindly, just for a minute, before maybe the member responded, just I want to add one or two things. Honorable Speaker, for clarity, the minimum wage is defined as a minimum and amount of remuneration that an employer is required to pay wage earners for the work performed during a given period of time. And of course, it has the statement has gone ahead to clearly state that in this category, in the private sector, the Wage Council establishes the said in Section 43. And Honorable Speaker, they are stated for record in the said, Honorable Speaker, in the said legal notice, it clearly states the minimum payable wage stated for the day watchman and the night watchman, and it is clearly stated that the day watchman is 15,201. The other one is 16,417, not including the basic, not including the house allowances, which are calculated according to the provided laws. And of course, not also including extra overtime. So I want to submit, Honorable Speaker.
Robert Mbui, you are satisfied?
Mr. Speaker, I am not satisfied. The Article 94 is clear that no authority, nobody has the power, the ability and the power to make anything with the force of law except Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that what they have done is wrong, and they needed to have just withdrawn that legal note.
Yes, Chief Konga.
Mr. Speaker, first I want to take this opportunity to thank the Chair for bringing the response to the question asked by the Honorable Mbui, who is a member of the... I have listened very carefully to Regulations Act. These are not regulations, these are substantial. In fact, I want to ask the Chair to move an amendment to remove the word regulations, because regulations are supposed to be made pursuant to the sections that are contained in that act itself. Because it is inconceivable that an act of Parliament is also a regulation. So we expect a better response from the ministry than this. What they are issues that were raised by the Honorable Mbui, and we have told the CS and the PS that they must bring this regulation. Fortunately enough, Mr. Speaker, the person who was a problem in the regulatory authority has been removed by a fluctuation of time. And so we want to thank his removal. In any event, it's just been a problem. It's just been a problem to this sector. And so, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing the court needs to pronounce itself on. The regulations are a nullity in themselves. There is nothing to discuss. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I have keenly listened to the statement by the chair, and I think the statement itself is misleading, because what PSRA claims is that they have done administrative action and not a legal notice. However, by the government printer, and so it cannot be an administrative action. But the most important part is that the regulations that are being cited and being implemented by the Private Security Regulatory Authority is one that has been annulled by the 12th Parliament. There are new regulations that are now in the works and in the process that have not even come to our committee of delegated. That means what they are implementing is an illegality, and they are causing a lot of despondency in the industry. My advice to Kenyans, all stakeholders in the security industry, is that the regulations being implemented by the Private Security Regulatory Authority is null and void, and that they should not be cheating Kenyans that they are doing something which is legal. It's not legal, it's illegal. But this House has not approved. The minimum wages are published by the Ministry of Labor. PSRA has no role or mandate whatsoever to get involved on matters minimum wage. Their work is to implement what has been set by the Ministry of Labor. Now it's the other way around. They want to set minimum wage and they want to implement, and that is not their mandate or their role. And I call upon the PSRA, and I want to acknowledge the chairman's resolve that this thing requires all stakeholders to get involved so that we have a regulation that is a win-win both for the employers and the employees. As it stands now, those regulations are not in force and are an illegality, and PSRA should stop harassing and interfering with the work of private security firms in the country. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Tongoyo, you've had the chair of delegated legislation, you've had Mbui, you've had Bashir. I would direct you that you relook at the statement. Certainly that body on its own has no authority in law to promulgate what looks like regulations. Those regulations must come to this House. There is no other body in this country with legislative powers other than Parliament, which is National Assembly and Senate, and county assemblies. Nobody else. In whatever office, whatever they do must be subjected to this House to become regulations and have a force of law. So you follow it up. Yes, Raso? Yes. Honorable Raso, take your seat, let him finish. Let me listen to this first.
Speaker, I think, kindly, Mike, on your direction, directive well guided. And in fact, you must have noted, Honorable Speaker, that we have been in conversation with the chair of delegated legislation. And I think that is the spirit. But having said this, Honorable Speaker, I think, Honorable Speaker, the big issue here, on record, I think there has been an issue of licenses cancelled, cancellation of some licenses of some players, about 9 in number. Actually, when you were interviewing the CS, I think that question came up. For record purposes, and I've got even actually the certificate, those 9 has been reinstated. The minister reinstated them, so I want to be on record that those licenses have been reinstated. And I think on the other issue, we are going to do as guided by yourself. Thank you.
So,
thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, you have guided on what should be done. But looking at what the chairman has presented in form of a response from Honorable Mbui, I think the first thing is anything to do with labor, it has to be canvassed. It is a two-sided thing, to protect the company and also to protect the individuals who are in that particular labor force. Secondly, as you rightly said, Article 94, Sub-Article 5, clearly says nothing will have the force of law unless it is by this House. Thirdly, when we look at this particular organization, private security, yes, it is a new organization, even if it is 4 years, but it cannot work on its own. It has to work with the Ministry of Labor so that individuals working in those organizations are duly protected. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Tongo, you follow up that, and at some point you will be required to report back to the House what steps you have taken and guidance to this body that if they want to make any regulations, they must follow the procedure and bring them to the House. Yes, Mwenje?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise on the same standing order 44. Honorable Speaker, I've had a chance to talk with the chair of Security Committee. If you remember last week, I'd raised a statement regarding a child who was shot in my constituency. The chair has advised that I think the response is not ready. Perhaps he can be willing to just commit maybe tomorrow or the day after, because my constituents are actually on TV watching. So it would be nice if you would respond. But Honorable Speaker, while I'm on my feet, I'd also request the chair, in Nairobi constituency, chair, Honorable Speaker, we had 4 fires in 4 markets, which is an issue of concern. We had in Toi Market, we had in Umoja 2, we had in Mathare, and somewhere in Kawangware.
Honorable Mwenje, you'll do the House and yourself a very, very good thing if you file even a question under private notice, which we can allow you to make a request on the floor even the same day. But when now you just ambush, it's not fair even to the chairman that you are directing. Go and file a question by private notice. I'll allow you to bring it tomorrow. We all feel for Kenyans who died in infernos in Nairobi and elsewhere.
Most obliged, Honorable Speaker, I'll do that. Thank you.
And for Tongoyo, the issue of the child who was shot, can you bring the statement on Thursday?
I think, Honorable Speaker, what the member was alluding to, I think the major concern was the child is doing well. He's actually supposed to be discharged from the hospital. The problem was the pending bill in KNH. And I had managed to talk to the Ministry of the PS, and we are trying to look into ways of helping the, yeah.
And do so, that's good enough. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report on consideration of the audited accounts of specified state corporations. Question to be put.
Honorable members on their feet, take your seats. Order. Honorable. This House adopts the second report of the Public Investments Committee on Social Services, Administration and Agriculture on its consideration of the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kenya Medical Training College for financial years 2017-2018, 2012-2013, and 2013-2014. The Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technologies Board for financial years 2014-2015 to 2020-2021, and the K4. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, nominees to 4 National Government Constituencies Development Fund committees.
Chairperson, Select Committee on the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, Musa Sirma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move that this House adopts the report of the committee laid on the table of the House. Move that for adoption. Mr. Speaker, I have an issue which is very pertinent to members of Parliament, and this is on the procedure of how members of this committee are going to be nominated in future, and we have had problems with it, Mr. Speaker. We have been sending the names to the board, who subsequently send them to the PS Economic Planning, and then after that to the Attorney General before going to the government printer. Honorable Speaker, there's a slight change to this procedure that pursuant to section to circular reference OP stroke cabinet .9/1A dated 25th 2022, subject to guidelines and procedures for appointment of chairpersons, board members, and chief executive officers of state corporations and other bodies. The names now require express approval of the Office of the Head of Public Service prior to gazettement. It is in line with this circular. The names appointees of National Government Constituency Development Fund committees are now submitted to the Head of Public Service for approval before they are gazetted by the government printers. The 2022-2023 gazettements were, however, not affected by these guidelines. Madam Speaker, the first constituency to be affected by this circular was Tiati constituency. The board had received a request for replacement of the member which was gazetted via Gazette Notice 1284 of January 15, 2024. The other constituencies to be affected by the circular are Gatanga and Nyeri town. The names of these to the NGCDF committees for these two constituencies are still pending. And Mr. Speaker, I managed to talk to the head of government printer, Mr. Hassan, and I asked him to give me the regulations which has changed this which has changed the gazettement. And he told me that he was told by word of mouth that he just needs to send them to the Head of Public Service. Honorable Speaker, the terms of the committee members for all 290 constituencies will come to an end at various dates in the late 2024 and early 2025. In the meantime, the board will continue receiving requests for replacement due to various issues, with key reasons being the death and resignation of members. We fear that this procedure of names requiring express approval of the Office of the Head of Public Service prior to gazettement will derail the workings of the constituency. Honorable Speaker, the National Government Constituency Development Fund Committee, therefore, is requesting for an exemption for the NGCDF board from submitting the names of appointees to NGCDF committees to the Office of the Head of Public Service for approval, because it is going to delay and we may note the names within the time. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that we
Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act recommends Ms. Lynette Washeli Muganda and Mr. Mohamed Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the Salaries Commission. Mr. Speaker, that was my opening, the moving. Because of the loud constitution, it missed the ears of the watchful clerks at the desk, and my apologies. Mr. Speaker, you know, there's a story of an old dog. Mr. Speaker, in this house, you just wished me many years when I was telling you that, colleagues, I'm 64 years old. I'm an old dog, and I've spent over 50% of my adult life, over 50% of my working life, working in this parliament, and therefore I can proudly say that I can also teach the clerks at the table to be more attentive.
Senator Boni, that is uncalled for.
Mr. Speaker,
if
I
you're done
withdraw.
moving, can you proceed?
Mr. Speaker, you know, you and I, because of our age, we also have a responsibility to educate the young.
Your motion? You done moving your motion?
Mr. Speaker, I am moving it. My time is still. I was just.
Okay, call upon your seconder, please.
So, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to request the young senator, who is one of the youngest members in the House, Senator Orwoba, Gloria, to second my motion, and I hope that she'll come along and come with the others in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this motion and support the report that has been tabled by the Finance Committee. Mr. Speaker, before I even go into my comments on why I second this, support this report, Mr. Speaker, I think it's imperative that Kenyans understand what the Salaries and Remuneration Commission actually does, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before the SRC, we actually used to have issues of remuneration and benefits pegged on ad hoc committees. And those committees were limited in the work that they could do and in the sectors that they could actually go in and try and streamline, Mr. Speaker. Because of those shortcomings, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission was set in place to make sure that all public servants are able to channel their views in terms of benefits, in terms of salaries, and in terms of the working environment, so that we can have a system to make sure that the market is as competitive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know many people are also wondering, what does the Senate have to do with the SRC? But you know, our role in Senate is to make sure that we represent counties and protect the interests of counties. And in those counties, Madam Speaker, we have public servants who also need to be taken care of. And this is why, as it has been set out in the Constitution, that the Senate actually nominates 2 people to the SRC, and hence the direction that the Finance Committee has taken, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, I've had a lot of comments of members of this House actually trying to say that unlike other processes that are ongoing in the National Assembly, you know, this process was better than others. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the members in this House to understand that in order for us to strengthen our institutions, we have to be able, as a House and as members of this House, responsible members of this House, to also understand the process, Madam Speaker. For those who are making comments that the Finance Committee has done way better than what is happening in the National Assembly, Madam Speaker, I don't even think a report has been tabled in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries, Madam Speaker. So let us also be fair, and let us also guide Kenyans as leaders who are responsible to understand the processes that are within both the National Assembly and the Senate before we can stand and make sensational comments just so that we can be popular out there, Madam Speaker. A report is yet to be tabled in terms of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries. The same way this report of the Finance Committee, we have waited as leaders in this House. We have waited for the process to take place. We have waited for the report to be tabled. And having read the report as a responsible leader, then I am commenting and seconding on that report. Madam Speaker, I want to urge the senators in this House, we are better and we are the upper house. And we should be able to understand the process and respect these institutions if we are going to trust these institutions, and if we can accord the same to the members of the National Assembly, and particularly to the committee that is actually dealing with the vetting of the cabinet secretary. The Finance Committee of this House has actually done an impeccable job. And if you look at the applicants of all the members who wanted to be seconded to become commissioners at the SRC through the Senate, it was a huge pool of candidates, Madam Speaker, and the Finance Committee took their time, vetted all the applicants, and were able to even score them, Madam Speaker. Of the two nominees that are being presented in this House, the lady, Lynette Washiali, if I am not wrong, scored 74% as a mean score. And we have Mohammed Aden, who scored 70.29%, Madam Speaker. So perhaps what I would like to speak through is the transparency of this process within the Finance Committee. Transparent process. Maybe we can even see some of the scores that they are giving the cabinet nominees, so that we can be able to say that indeed this person either performed poorly or did not perform at all, as we have seen with the nominees of this Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, I also want to speak to the fact that as we are sending these two nominees to represent and ensure that we protect the interests of the counties in the SRC Commission, Madam Speaker, I think it's important that a lot of sensitization is done in terms of what is the mandate of this commission. People associate the SRC Commission with benefits, and particularly benefits of legislators or members of parliament, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is imperative that perhaps in their working operating procedures, because they have committees within SRC that works on different mandates, Madam Speaker, I think Kenyans should also understand that it's the same SRC that has a structured system to send a representative to deal with the issue of the wage bill, Madam Speaker, to also deal with the issue of the legal and the policy frameworks, as well as the job evaluation and the salary structures that we have, not only within the National Assembly and the Senate, but also in public service and all other sectors, down to the devolved institutions that we have, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the members of the Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, as the mover of the bill has stated, that there are many unnecessary bureaucratic processes that we perhaps put in when we are vetting either commissioners or members of the public service, Madam Speaker. And this is an area that, as much as we are making fun of, we really need to look into, Madam Speaker. During the vetting of one of the cabinet nominees in the National Assembly, I had some complaints coming from the committee talking about how our recruitment of our KDF soldiers is still backdated, such that they are still asking for physical measures of certain body parts and things like that. Madam Speaker, I think that is the point that Senator Boni Halwale was trying to say, that in the interest of improving the efficiency, in the interest of improving our work as public servants, as leaders who are there to make sure that there is transparency and check. When you ask someone about their wealth, what was their intended purpose? I believe the intended purpose, when that particular question was structured, was first of all to declare, so that we can be able to, as those who are watching you, to check if you are stealing any monies from the public coffers, but also so that we can check that even as you are creating all this wealth, because we have seen many cabinet nominees increasing their wealth over 100 million, Madam Speaker, in a year. Personally, I can tell you my wealth has gone down within this year. So when we are putting those measures, we should also be able to sensitize the public that perhaps we are asking, because we also want to go to their KRA portals to see how much of that percentage was remitted as taxes, Madam Speaker. I think if we do not have proper structures of checks and balances, then we end up being a house of talking and just creating nonsensical bureaucratic measures that are not needed in terms of vetting, Madam Speaker. I would want to add my voice on that and say that perhaps also the Finance Committee that has done a good job, maybe when it comes to issues of vetting and deciding which nominee they are going to put in a commission, why didn't we have that televised, Madam Speaker? Why didn't we have that so that we could follow, so that we could have listened to our nominees, Lynette and Mohammed? We would have been able to understand how the committee actually decided on these two people. So maybe a lesson for the Finance Committee is, as much as you're criticizing the National Assembly, a point to take is that more transparency, and I believe we have the measures, we have the systems. In Bunge Towers, we can be able to televise some of these things that are happening in the committee. Because I was also a bit curious as to how the other members performed with regards to these final ones who were shortlisted. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I want to encourage, Madam Speaker, I want to encourage Kenyans who are out there. We have a lot of these kind of opportunities that seem to be passing even the young Kenyans because they are not aware, Madam Speaker. And maybe a lesson to the Finance Committee is how to put out that information that we are looking for a commissioner to be able to go and protect the interests of the counties, to be able to sit in SRC. If that information can be put out publicly and maybe sent to our young generation like the Gen Zs so that they can also get an opportunity, even if they don't make it to the final list, but an opportunity to participate in the process, Madam Speaker. If you look at the age of the nominees, you will see that both are senior citizens. And I say this in jest because we need to get to a point where we are having more youth participating and being able to come to the table where the decisions are being made. Madam Speaker, in the interest of time, I want to conclude, but before I conclude, I want to say that since we have seen, and I don't know whether this will be taken as a recommendation, but since we have seen that the systems of Senate, that the committees of Senate are actually very effective and efficient, Madam Speaker, perhaps this is an opportune time to have a conversation as to why the Senate is not involved in vetting cabinet secretaries or all other nominees that are sent to the National Assembly. And if it is because it is pegged on a standing order or the Constitution, Madam Speaker, that is why we are here as legislators. I believe that this House can add good input in terms of vetting. As you can see, the Finance Committee has proven again and again that we are good at this and our processes are transparent. And I believe that some of us also, Madam Speaker, would be able to pose certain questions. Madam Speaker, you know, on Sunday I was listening to the nominee, cabinet secretary nominee of gender, Madam Speaker. Maybe it was an issue of lack of preparedness. Maybe it was an issue of mismatch. Very sad moment as women leaders, because, Madam Speaker, it was me who stood on this floor of this House, having read the credentials of the cabinet nominee of gender. It was me who stood here and said that I have so much faith based on what I could read from her CV, Madam Speaker. And this is a clear indication, and maybe perhaps if you can juxtapose that with the nominee Joho, this is a clear indication, Madam Speaker, that sometimes we can get very good profiles on paper, but at the end of the day, the person is able to rise to the occasion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Point of order, Senator Joyce. What is your point of order?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Is it in order for the honourable member to touch on the nominees or the other House role to an extent that we are creating attention, yet the House has done it and they are going on with the reports. Is it in order for Honourable Gloria to maybe touch on the nominees at this House?
Senator Gloria, you have touched on the nominee and the process is ongoing. What is your response to the comment or the point of order by
Madam Speaker? I was simply highlighting the process of vetting and trying to juxtapose the process of the vetting that we had from the Finance Committee, which was able to bring together the two nominees, which we are actually supporting the report. Madam Speaker, I have had members of this House, and if I may be a bit more specific, Senator Crystal Asige, actually engage in how maybe we can better our processes by referencing the current ongoings in the National Assembly. Madam Speaker, if I am out of order, I withdraw.
Senator Gloria, maybe what I would guide you is that since the process is ongoing, and we would not want to put the cart before the horse. I believe the report is not yet done. The determination is still pending before the House, and comments on the floor of this House could as well give an impact on the mind of the interviewing panel. So the best is to leave that issue out in your debate until it's determined by National Assembly, when then it becomes open for us to also debate upon it. So please be guided accordingly, and for the time being, you can withdraw it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I definitely do hope that the comments I have made will impact the committee. However, I withdraw.
We do not want those comments. Just to clarify, these comments should not be the ones that are guiding that committee. That House is independent and should objectively make its own finding and verdict. They are competent men, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members who are superintending over that matter. So they have the capacity to determine, to prepare a report, give us the report, upon which we will be able then to debate on it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand guided. I wish to conclude by saying that we need to be responsible enough to make our processes efficient, Madam Speaker. My point was that as senators who are watching the vetting, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of glaring questions in terms of the processes. And perhaps what I was trying to shed some light on is that maybe a few notes could be taken from the Finance Committee. And maybe, Madam Speaker, the conversation that I'm trying to forcefully introduce to this House is how does the Senate at one point interact with that process or is able to give input, Madam Speaker. However, having said that, I want to conclude by saying that I proudly second this motion and support this report. And I do hope that once we have the two nominees approved and they start their work, Madam Speaker, they will remember that as Senate, we are there to protect the interests of the county. And Madam Speaker, that they should also remember that their nomination should guide and help protect the interests of the counties as commissioners within the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. I submit. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I propose the question that Senate adopts the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of the member of Salaries and Remuneration Commission laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 23rd July 2024, and further pursuant to Article 232B(7) of the Constitution and Section 7(2) of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission Act, recommends Ms. Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Muhammad Aden Abdi to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning for transmission to His Excellency the President for consideration for appointment to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Honorable Senators, the motion is open for debate, and I will ask Senator Cherari K. Samson Kiprotich to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the onset, I want to laud the Committee of Finance and Budget. I know it's one of the busiest committees.
And before you proceed, I think it's important I guide the House that the law requires nomination of a recommendation of two candidates, a man and a woman, and the President will appoint one of them. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for that guidance. I was to indicate, but it is important you did. Madam Speaker, I want to support and say the Finance and Budget Committee has done a tremendous job, a good job. For this, I think this report is well done, well captured, Madam Speaker. I think apart from the Senate County Public Accounts Committee, the second busiest committee is Finance and Budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have seen credentials and the role of SRC, Madam Speaker. Let me say the following. Of course, under Article 230, the role of SRC cannot be gainsaid. It is very critical because now the decision of review of civil servants' salaries, which we are being told today, Madam Speaker, out of the revenue we collect as a country, Madam Speaker, 1.1 trillion goes to public servants in this republic. Therefore, the role SRC plays is very critical, Madam Speaker. And I've seen SRC has not been taking lightly the comments we make about their work. I have even suggested in the past that SRC should be a part-time commission because their work is not 8 to 5, Madam Speaker. Their work is to review periodically the salaries and remuneration and personal emoluments of public servants and state officers across this country, as was envisaged in Article 230. In fact, we should be looking at possibility of reducing the number of SRC commissioners in this republic, Madam Speaker, so that we are also, because if we are spending 1.1 trillion on salaries, personal emoluments for state officers, Madam Speaker, for civil servants, it is unfair because these civil servants, majority of Kenyans are not employed by a government, Madam Speaker. And therefore, even as we approve or as we transmit this motion, Madam Speaker, for the Minister of Treasury, of course, as we wait for the report of the National Assembly on the vetting exercise, of course, the CS nominee of Treasury, John Badingongo, should, if they get opportunity, to ensure that these people we approve give value to the offices that we are talking about. And therefore, in fact, SRC, Madam Speaker, has not been helpful in advice. By the way, if the reading, Madam Speaker, and you are a very senior lawyer in this republic, Madam Speaker, and Secretary General Emeritus, who ensured that you midwife the current government, Madam Speaker, it cannot be gainsaid. The work of SRC is to advise. I don't know where they got these powers. They have arrogated themselves powers to set the salary. It's not their business, Madam Speaker. And we have sat, Madam Speaker, they have never assisted us. Look, for example, at UHC, Universal Health Coverage in Tans. We spend hours here. They told us they will work with the Council of Governors to confirm under permanent and pensionable terms of UHC in Tans, Madam Speaker. Who served this country as true heroes when we have a COVID of 2020? They didn't assist. We have had push and pull over the issue of members of County Assembly, the MCS, Madam Speaker. Their personal emoluments, their welfare, Madam Speaker, but they have done nothing to ensure, Madam Speaker. And you know, under the labor laws, the law does not allow anybody to have their salary cut. It is never practiced anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker. We have told them, Madam Speaker, can you advise the country on the issue of welfare of members of County Assembly, Madam Speaker? We have insisted, we have sat through the AMCA, Madam Speaker. SRC has been no show. We have sat with a CAF, Madam Speaker. We have even, you remember, the intern doctors that demonstrated for the longest time possible. SRC could not advise the country, Madam. It is their domain to give a practical, implementable with the current, Madam. You saw the embarrassment that they wanted to put members of, and I suspect SRC was part of the people who are inciting Gen Z in this republic, Madam. Because when there were protests in these countries, SRC went and issued a circular of increasing salaries of members of parliament and other state officers. If we had not rejected, Madam Speaker, tungesalamiwa with these Gen Zs, they have embarrassed us. It means they are not having their work cut out. They don't follow what they should be doing as SRC, Madam Speaker. It was embarrassing. They embarrassed the presidency. They embarrassed the state officers, members of parliament. When the country is going through hard economic times, Madam Speaker, why would you want to increase the salary? And it embarrasses us, Madam. We in fact, I propose that through your office and through the head of public service, SRC must give us unreservedly apology to the country of the Kenya and state officers for putting us into embarrassment and setting us against coalition cause with the great people of Kenya, Madam Speaker. We have Kenyans who are earning less, Madam Speaker. Why don't you look at that? Every time Central Court and you saw Francis Atwoli, the other day when they're suppressing Labor Day. What is about the minimum wage? That is when we need the wisdom of SRC. It is not their business to look at what members of parliament and state officers should do. They should be looking at the minimum wage, the Wanjikus of this world, the Matzayos of this world, Madam Speaker, the Kiprotich of this world who do not have anything minimum wage, Madam Speaker. And that is why today as we talk, the allegations we are hearing, the governor of Nandi can hire young people, Madam Speaker, and give them helmets and give them the sticks, hockey stick, horse stick, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the sticks, the djembe sticks, to walk around and around in Kapsabet town as we talk, Madam Speaker, harassing law-abiding citizens because members of public wanted to go and occupy his office and ask billions of shillings, close to more than 50 billion that has been allocated to Nandi. Where is it? But he has gone ahead and hired, Madam Speaker, people carrying djembes, carrying funny crude weapons, walking around Kapsabet town, Madam Speaker. As we talk, it is shame for a governor to use the resources, and Governor Sang must be called out. Instead of providing drugs to Kapsabet County Referral Hospital, he is busy providing djembe sticks to young people to go and harass others, Madam Speaker. And I don't fear to, I am embarrassed of the Nandi County security team, Madam Speaker. In Namgoi, in the town, criminals are walking around with djembe sticks, and the county commander and the county security team is sitting unless they have been compromised by Governor Sang, Madam Speaker. It is very unfortunate. It is so sad. We go and tax Kenyans, give counties money. The governors misuse that money for their own selfish gains, Madam Speaker. We cannot allow at this country, Madam Speaker. It is very unfortunate, Madam Speaker. And I want to challenge the Acting Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kanja, to tell us why would the police officers and county commander and county security team are sitting while young people, criminals hired by the governor, are walking around with the djembe sticks, harassing young men and women, pregnant mothers, the disabled in Kapsabet town in a clear, broad daylight, Madam Speaker. And yet we are struggling here. As we talk today, the ECD teachers of Nandi County are supposed to go on strike because they have not been paid. But when you hire hooligans, the county has money to hire, but they can't buy drugs. They can't pay ECD teachers very well, Madam Speaker. The roads are impassable in Nandi as we talk, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as a house, and I'll be bringing a comprehensive statement to have the Inspector General of Police. We are doing what we call in quotes bad manners in this country, Madam Speaker. Because if you are allowing criminals to walk around with djembe sticks, with crude weapons, in a big town like Kapsabet, Madam Speaker, what are you selling the rest of the country, Madam Speaker? I will be challenging, Madam Speaker, and therefore, we must agree that even as we approve, we pass anything, Madam Speaker, in this house, we must ensure, Madam Speaker, we speak truth to the power. And governors should understand that they don't exist, they don't have powers that they can overrun the police, Madam Speaker, that they can overrun the security apparatus. Unless you are telling the country you no longer trust, Madam Speaker, under Article 37, the right to picket and demonstrate. You saw there were national protests. I didn't hear the president directing or taking people to street to counter demonstrate. In fact, the president said, let people demonstrate and be given security as per Article 37 and 38. Unless Kapsabet town, Madam Speaker, is in another country. But if it is in the country that is Kenya, just like Kilifi, just like Mombasa, just like our neighbors in Kakamega, just like in Homa Bay, just like in Tana River, Madam Speaker, then there is a big problem, Madam Speaker. We should be called out, and I want to challenge the Inspector General of Police acting, even as he comes for vetting. We must see action as at now to ensure that we protect the right of Kenyans. Why would you somebody have a problem? The other day, Madam Speaker, we normally have demonstrators here at the gate. You as the Speaker has never ordered anybody to be clobbered or being harassed for coming to Parliament to present their petition, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the SRC under Article 230, even in vetting. Madam Speaker, I was surprised because I saw members of National Assembly and it is unanswered. If somebody challenged me, I can produce. When the message was read of vetting of Inspector General of Police, I was embarrassed that some members of National Assembly, and it is in the interest of my minority leader, Madam Speaker, Senator Retired Justice Madzai, that some members of National Assembly said Senate does not have a role in vetting of Inspector General of Police. Which constitution are they reading? Which law? Security is a shared function, Madam Speaker. The security is a shared function, just like a disaster preparedness emergency. I was wondering, Madam Speaker, and I always get shocked. Which country are we in when members of National Assembly contest the vetting? Madam Speaker, if members of National Assembly embarrass themselves with what they did, they should not use that Senate to redeem themselves. They should redeem themselves. Why were they bash and attack Senate? They attacked us on conflict of interest bill. It is unanswered. They didn't want Senate to be part of the Inspector General of Police vetting. It is the Constitution. The law is very clear under Article 93. Parliament is the Senate and the National Assembly. Security is a shared function. You cannot say, and that is why we fought in this Parliament. And I know people who have stayed longer, like Senator Manzai and Senator Kalwale, will tell you, we wanted even governors to sit in County Security Committee. Because if a problem occurs today, you will need that governor to be part of security restored within that county or within that constituency, Madam. We fought for long. So it was embarrassing. Even senior house leaders, like my majority whip, Silvana Sosoro, I thought they should not bear, Madam Speaker, and the answer can bear me witness. And that is why, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, when I saw even vetting of CSS, I know the report is being written, Madam Speaker, but we can make general observations because it was an open process, Madam Speaker. You find the process of vetting of cabinet nominees, Madam Speaker. Even the chair was talking more than the nominees and making just comments, Madam Speaker, and making funny comments. How do you tell a nominee don't bring your bedroom matters before this committee? Is that even a valid question to ask? Instead of asking how many taxes you are paid for this country, what is your ability, what is your competence? Madam Speaker, I'm impressed by a number of nominees. One person going for PhD. Which inspiration would you want? That inspiration is the best. It means in life you must work hard. So from that vetting, at least the young people who do not perform well, people who went to Kumbaru, Madam Speaker. I know Senator Kalwala has not been having kind words towards me, but the inspiration of Governor Hali Hassan Joho, the nominee of mining and blue economy, Madam Speaker, even shocked the country with the grasp of Queen's language, with that clear thought process, Madam Speaker. I think that was the observation, Madam Speaker. Another nominee that impressed me was the former MP of Garissa Town, Aden Duale, Madam Speaker. I was happy with his honesty. He said he doesn't receive phone calls because members of parliament are corrupt. Anyway, the chair did not decide to correct, so it is unanswered. Minister Duale was an honest man. He said he does not receive our phone calls as members of parliament because we are corrupt, Madam Speaker. But no one corrected. It is unanswered. We can print it and bring it here, Madam Speaker. So we need honest. Even Madam Speaker, Eric Muredi that was having is 32 million. I want to agree and challenge the GNC that Eric Muredi, Madam Speaker, if approved, will be is only 32 million worth. He doesn't have a car. He's a young man with a vision. That should encourage, Madam Speaker, how we perform as a country. We should believe in the people that we have, Madam Speaker. So even as we did vetting, and I'm proposing this, Madam Speaker, going into the future, can you direct when our committees does vetting, like finance and budget? I have noticed in our committee rooms, Madam Speaker, there is no video recording. It is only answered. I wish and I request, and I wish the commissioners or the commissioner is here, at least every committee room should have a video recording so that we have the answer and video recording, so that some of us, Madam Speaker, some of these videos that are being vetted, Madam Speaker, can have opportunity to be able to go through, Madam Speaker. So the exercise that has been carried, we hope when the report will be tabled, I think, Madam Speaker, going into the future, let us ensure the track record, the capacity and ability, Madam Speaker, goes into the future, Madam Speaker. So we believe the vetting that was being done. And I want to request, Madam Speaker, I don't know how your office will look. I want to request the way we saw vetting in National Assembly with cabinet nominees. I don't know, we should have structured questions to be used in vetting, like the way the Finance and Budget Committee, Senator Kalwale is here, should tell us what would happen, Madam Speaker. Because the questions that were being asked, Madam Speaker, some are embarrassing, some were supposed to juxtapose, Madam Speaker. Let us ensure, even as we wait for the report, and I hope we'll get the report from the National Assembly when they table it on Wednesday or Thursday, Madam Speaker. That report, we should get it and ensure that it comes to place. Of course, Madam Speaker, I wouldn't have comments on nominee of sports because that is transferring incompetence from roads to sports, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, going into the future, we must agree under Article 230 on SRC that let us approve.
Senator Cherargei, I had given a direction regarding commenting on a process which has not been completed by the other house. I gave that direction to Senator Gloria, and it should have clearly informed your debate. It seems not to have been informed by that, and I now guide you not to touch that process
Madam
until
Speaker?
it's determined and a report done by the other house. Because the integrity of that house is equally protected as the integrity. The process they are doing is equally protected, just like the process is being done by this house. So please withdraw that.
Madam Speaker, there is what we call fair comment in the fair administration process, and I'm just making a general comment. I have not mentioned anybody's name, unless you know that person. Have I? I have not.
The nominee is clearly known, Senator Cherargei.
Madam Speaker, I think the standing orders...
Every member would take judicial notice of who the nominee in respect of the Ministry of Sport is. So it is safest to do what Senator Gloria did, leave that process until it bakes fully, so that you don't interfere with the
I leave that process.
That
I leave that process there. But Madam Speaker, for the benefit of the House, I would want to refer the House to Speaker Mate's case on the decision of his removal as the MPO Speaker. If you read the principle of the High Court, it talks about such instance. But I stand guided by your directions. Finally, Madam Speaker, and you know, I might be your voter in future. So you need to handle me very nicely also, Madam Speaker, as you try to get back to be the Secretary General of UDA. Madam Speaker, so I wanted Article 230.
Senator Boni, what is your point of order?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I've been listening to your guidance. I do really need further clarification. Your comment on Oroba, and now your comment on Senator Cherargei. In view of the centrality and the importance of public participation, doesn't therefore mean that nominees are not protected from the kind of speech that Gloria made and the kind of speech Cherargei has made? They are making a fair comment. They will not vote. It is up to the National Assembly to vote as they care, but to get as much information about those candidates as they can, including the remark that has been made by the Senator for Nandi. It's a question of opinion. If public participation is allowed, he should be free to say what he thinks about that candidate to help Parliament to make the proper decision. Please guide us. I think I'm lost.
Honorable Senator, thank you for seeking that clarification. The difference is that those nominees are already sitting and have the opportunity to respond to any claim that will be raised by the interview panel. In this House, the nominees are not here yet. So if any issue is raised, they don't have the advantage. So we'll be breaching their rules of natural justice when they are going through an important process. So it is important that when such is raised before the determination is made, at least they be present to respond to it. And since they are not, and the report is not yet out, if the report was out and a verdict has already been rendered by the panel on the other house, then it will be easy to debate and it will be easy to accept as a public record once the report is out. So I still guide that since they cannot defend themselves, we allow the National Assembly to complete the process while we await the report. We will still have a chance to.
Madam Speaker, I want to wish well the two candidates. I know the law says President will appoint one. And the committee, of course, we hope to see those SRC members before this committee, Madam Speaker, but to support and ask the House to support and ask the SRC if one of them, because there are two, if either of them succeed, Madam Speaker, they should assist the country in advising on the issue of ballooning, Madam Speaker, not only national wage but also county wage. The only county that is below, Madam Speaker, because I have advantages that is below 35% is Turkana County. The rest are beyond 35 as per the regulations on wage bill. We need also to work with County Public Service Board to bring that to an end. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, and in suggesting remarks, I therefore support the report, Madam Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kajwang Moses Otieno.
Madam Speaker, I rise to contribute to this motion. Whenever we give a task to committees of the House, it is our belief that they prosecute and execute in the best interest of the House, in the best interest of the nation, and in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya. Madam Speaker, I have requested for disclosure on the CVs of the applicants that the committee considered, because in the report, the committee has mentioned that there were very many applicants. There were 48 applicants. And then there was a short list of about 10, and then about 15, and then 2 persons were picked from that list. And Madam Speaker, I take note that when I look at the short list, we have 2 ladies who topped the list. And that's quite impressive to find that 2 female applicants were considered to be the best. Now, the law requires that the House nominates a man and a woman. And as a result, Madam Speaker, I can see from this report that there is a female applicant who came from Mombasa County, who was number 2, and that is Mohammed Nahida Athman, who got 71.29% score, higher than Mohammed Aden Abdi, the male whom the lot has fallen on, who got 70.29. Mr. Speaker, when you are debating this kind of motion, it's important that the clerks give us the full information, the full picture, because I would be very, very interested in seeing the CV of Lynette Washiali Muganda from Kakamega, the CV of Mohammed Nahida Athman, and the CV of Mohammed Aden Abdi. Madam Speaker, the Senate has got a role in constitutional commissions. Now, this is part of it, and this is a very, very important role that we play. How I wish that our colleagues knew how important this role is, and how hard we have fought for the Senate to be involved in appointments and financing of independent commissions. The approval of the Inspector General of Police is another solemn duty that this House must undertake, because the Constitution requires Parliament collectively to make that decision. The Commission on Revenue Allocation is another constitutional commission where our input is required. The Parliamentary Service Commission is another constitutional commission where the Senate is involved. Madam Speaker, our role is not only limited to vetting and making proposals. Our role, as per the Constitution, extends to funding. And when it comes to funding, Article 249(3) of the Constitution says, and Madam Speaker, I like reading this out because sometimes people wonder why the Senate wants to be involved in the affairs or in the financial matters of independent commissions. Article 249(3) says,
what is your point of order, Senator Gloria?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to bring to your attention under the Standing Order 246, under the Standing Order on broadcasting as well, Madam Speaker, there has been a recurring incident every time I speak in this. Not every time, but at least 3 times when I've been speaking, Madam Speaker. It is an intentional sabotage that when I'm at the floor, somehow, for a very peculiar reason, the online stream is tampered with, Madam Speaker. And I am speaking this confidently because I've actually walked out to find out, Madam Speaker. When I was seconding this motion, which is a very important motion, Madam Speaker, you can go and confirm and ascertain that they actually went offline. And they are claiming that there is some technicalities and issue, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you look at our standing order, and if I can just direct you to the standing order 245-2 and number 3, when it says, when broadcasting the proceedings of the Senate on television, the following guidelines shall apply. The camera shall focus on the senator recognized by the chair until the senator has finished speaking, Madam Speaker. I want to raise to the attention of the Speaker and to this House that whatever monkey business is happening, Madam Speaker, must come to an end.
Senator Gloria.
Because
Senator Gloria, what standing order are you?
245. 245, Madam Speaker, talks of broadcasts of Senate proceedings.
Yes.
And if you could go further to page 238 where it fleshes out, under 3 on television broadcasting, Madam Speaker.
230?
The page is 238. The standing order is 245, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this issue was even raised before by, I think, Senator Eddie Oketch, in terms of the quality and the provisions and all that. Madam Speaker, what I want to raise is that I've realized when I am making my submissions, Madam Speaker, there is somebody there behind trying to make sure that Kenyans don't hear what I am saying, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I protest. And this is against our standing orders and against my privileges and my rights as a senator, Madam Speaker. I call for an investigation, and whoever is found culpable must be taken to that same powers and privileges committee that they want to send all senators every time, Madam Speaker. It is a shame that people who should be assisting in actually ensuring that Kenyans get everything that is happening in this House are actually being used by cartels of this House to sabotage my message.
Senator Gloria Uroba, you cannot reference to cartels without substantiating whether there are cartels in the House. So you'll be required to substantiate that. And then, Senator Gloria, if you have a point of order. Senator Enoch Wambua, you have a point of order?
Yes, please, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, due respect, Senator Gloria stood on a point of order when Senator Kajwang was contributing. And I've been asking myself, what was out of order with what Senator Kajwang was presenting and the connection between what he was presenting on and what she has spoken about. Madam Speaker, this is also a house of record. And we also have to draw a line between issues that are administrative and issues that are for debate on the floor. Speaker, I say this as a leader in this House, and really, there is wisdom in what I'm saying. If we are to deal with administrative issues on the floor...
Senator Gloria, can you allow the senator to be heard in silence? You got your chance. Allow him. I said allow him to finish what is...
So, Speaker, if we are to deal with administrative issues on the floor, then what will happen is that every time we have an issue with the Secretariat, then we bring it on the floor. We will not look good. This is a house of record. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I will hear Senator Joyce, and then I'm going to give a direction.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Senator Gloria, wait for your chance.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would want to really echo the sentiments of Honorable Wambua, as far as I'm in agreement with Honorable Gloria, I would also want to humbly request Honorable Gloria to do a formal letter, a formal complaint that will go through the legal way, say that we have it in this floor of the House, because the issue that she's raising is touching on our staffs, and they don't have the room to come and defend themselves here. So the only way out is maybe to ask Honorable Gloria to do a formal letter, a complaint letter. Then from there is when we can, the office can be able to address the issue. So, and I would want to say that because it will not look proper when the motion that was turned, which was also seconded by Honorable Gloria, the Honorable Honorable Kachwang was on the floor trying to really prosecute the matter, and this issue now that is affecting Honorable Gloria and the staffs is brought in the middle of nowhere. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to request that she does a formal assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gloria, an issue has been raised by Senator Wambua on the nexus between your point of order to the discussion of the debate that had been undertaken by Senator Kajwang. Is there any nexus in like half a minute so that I can give a direction on the matter?
Madam Speaker, this is not about me as an individual. And this is where we go wrong. I have even quoted a standing order. This standing order was not tailor-made for Gloria Uroba. This is an issue about broadcasting, an issue about transparency, Madam Speaker. This motion that Senator Kajwang is actually contributing to was seconded by me as a senator at the floor of the House. This is an issue, and why I raised it mid his contribution is that we don't know if the same could be happening to his contributions, Madam Speaker, because I didn't even know that it was happening to me until I've stepped out and confirmed that indeed it was happening. So this is an issue not about me and Secretariat. This is an issue about the transparency of the processes of this House, Madam Speaker. And may I even dare say, Madam Speaker, that if they keep singling out the complaints that I bring to this floor as an issue about Gloria, Madam Speaker, first they came for the Jews, then they came for who? There'll be nobody left in this House, Madam Speaker. So we must address this very important issue.
Thank you. Senator Gloria, your point is heard. And let me now give a direction on it. You have raised an issue on broadcasting, and if I recall very well, this issue was still raised last week, and broadcasting is important. However, as a chair right now, I may not be able to know what has happened with regard to the broadcasting, and the only way the House would get to know what has transpired as you were seconding the motion would be for the clerk's dispatch desk to ensure that we have a report on whether the broadcasting was happening, the transmission was happening, or whether it was not happening. As at last week, the House had technical challenges, genuine technical challenges on transmission of the broadcast. And what I would guide Senator Gloria to also consider is the fact that as at last week, it had nothing to do with Gloria or any specific senator. It was an equipment challenge. And I believe the Secretariat is able to give a report and a guide as to whether we still have the delayed transmission. And also when you are raising such an issue, Senator Gloria, you raise it as an issue that is affecting the House. You don't have to always personalize it. It has nothing to do with you. This technical transmission was also an issue that was raised last week by several senators, if I may recall, whether it's last week or the other week, but it's an issue that the Secretariat desk has been working on. So give a report whether transmission was done, and it can be reported in the next session. And I think that should be the guide that will help us in that issue. Senator Kajwang, you can resume the debate.
Madam Speaker, I hope you'll allow me to recover the lost time because it was not related
as
to the
your
motion
time was
before us.
paused, you will not lose your minutes.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, let me go back to this because this is an extremely important undertaking that this Senate is called upon to do on behalf of county governments and on behalf of the nation. Madam Speaker, when you bring this motion for delegations and for senators to approve or reject, you must provide the full information and full disclosure. As I had said earlier, that there were 48 applicants who were narrowed down to 15. And the committee has given us the names of 2 applicants for consideration and for approval. Madam Speaker, I cannot make a decision in the absence of the details of the qualifications of those other applicants who had been shortlisted. In this list, Madam Speaker, I see Mr. Silas Otieno Owiti from Homa Bay, who scored 59.71%. At least give me a glimpse onto his CV. At least give me a glimpse, give me the notes so that I can see from the minutes how the performance was. And Madam Speaker, when it came to the appointment of Dr. Amoth, which is a motion before the House, I am seeing annexures and minutes and all the details of considerations of the committee. But when it comes to the discussion of these two nominees to the SRC, I have even requested in the official WhatsApp group for the annexure that carries the CVs, the annexure that carries the conversations that led to this decision. Madam Speaker, we must be careful because I've been through this exercise. I do recall about 6 years ago when this House was called upon to make a similar decision. There were even accusations of favor. There were even accusations of tribalism. There were even accusations that the committees were operating with an end in mind. And Madam Speaker, at that time, some of the applicants were former senators. They were former colleagues. It was very sad when some of them, a former senator who has been in this House for 5 years, was being disqualified for lack of experience. If you have been a senator for 5 years, or a member of National Assembly for 5 years, what other experience do you need to get a job in this country? What other experience do you need to undertake a role in a constitutional commission? And Madam Speaker, I want to be convinced that such considerations were not made in this case. And it would be important that before we take the vote, that we get the full disclosure of the minutes and the conversations and the resolutions and any dissenting opinion, if there was a dissenting opinion of members of that committee, Madam Speaker, because as I look at the adoption schedule, it has been approved by 5 out of 9. I would like to hear what the other 4 had to say with respect to the final decision that has been brought to this House. Madam Speaker, I am not imputing any improper motive. I am just asking for full information so that I can make a decision on the motion that is before us.
What is the point of order? Yeah, point of information.
Sorry.
Would you like to be informed by Senator Boni Halwale?
Madam Speaker, out of respect, I would wish to listen to Senator Boni Halwale.
Senator Halwale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the concerns by the Senator of Homa Bay are right and justified. It is true that what you are looking for is both on the Hansard recording of the proceedings of the committee, but it's also true that it is part of the report which has not been brought here. What you have here is the executive summary of the report. We could not have done all that we did for all the candidates. Number 2, Madam Speaker, the issue he has raised about the fear that there could have been tribalism and stuff like that, it will help. We had a marking scheme. The nearest way the committee approached the issue of how to handle the great tribes of Kenya was the constitutional requirement of regional balancing as to how much one was getting for academic endowment. If you had a bachelor's degree, you scored less than master's degree, and so on up to PhD. I beg to inform.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank Senator Halwale. Indeed, as a member of this committee, if there is important information that has not been brought before this House, then this motion should be stood down. I am looking at a similar report of a nomination for Dr. Amoth, Madam Speaker. And I'm looking at the iPad here. There is an annexure that is 244 pages. 244 pages. It has minutes. It has details. Why is this different? And it is a similar process where we are being called upon to exercise our constitutional and statutory duty to make approvals or appointments to constitutional commissions. This committee then, this motion should be deferred, and this conversation should stop at this moment until the committee brings us a full report, Madam Speaker. The report we have is 28 pages. 28 pages. How do we know that justice was served? If it was not the respect that I had for Senator Halwale, how would this House have been informed of that criteria? Madam Speaker, as I've said, I've gone through this process. And this particular process, we came to some conclusions. It was established that a committee had dismissed a former senator on the basis of lack of experience. And I've kept asking that once you have been elected as a senator or nominated as a senator, you have sat in this house approving budgets, approving appointments, writing laws, you have sponsored laws. How can a committee then come and tell you that you do not have requisite experience to become a member of a commission? And that's why we're insisting we need to see those annexures to see whether those kind of arguments found their way in the decision of this committee. Madam Speaker, I will leave it to the leadership of the House and to your wisdom to decide whether we are proceeding with adequate information and whether you're doing the right things. But let me make certain broad comments, Madam Speaker, as that point is still under consideration. That our role does not end with appointments. Our role extends to funding for constitutional commissions. And Madam Speaker, we have been weak and we have allowed that function or that role to go to the National Assembly when Parliament or when the Constitution clearly states that that is the role of Parliament. I want to read Article 249(3), which says that Parliament and not National Assembly and not Senate, that Parliament shall allocate adequate funds to enable each commission and independent office to perform its functions, and the budget of each commission and independent office shall be a separate vote. End of quote. Madam Speaker, the word there is Parliament, and it is not National Assembly. We have a responsibility, we have a duty to be engaged in the budgeting and resource allocation for constitutional commissions. It is an embarrassment when the Office of the Auditor General is running around begging for funds and saying that the National Assembly has arbitrarily trimmed down their allocations. It is an embarrassment when other commissions like the EACC come to us and say that, yes, Senate, you have referred 146 matters to us, but give us the resources to undertake our job. How can the Senate expect the EACC to carry out investigations in 47 county executives and in 47 county assemblies, and yet the Senate is not involved in allocation of budget to that commission? Madam Speaker, we must rise above our partisan political formations and stand for this House. When this House insisted on vetting the Inspector General of Police, I was in this House and Senator Boni Khalwale was there. The initial mischief was to process and fast track it through the National Assembly. This House stood up, and eventually the IG became a client of both houses. We must also insist that we give effect to Article 249(3). Otherwise, these commissions will have no respect for the Senate. These commissions will not follow up any matter that has been referred to them by the Senate, because he who pays the piper pays, who pays the piper plays the tune or calls the tune. So if they know it's the National Assembly that is involved in their resource allocation, even if there was competing recommendations, you tell EACC to pursue something, they will tell you they are still dealing with the recommendations of the National Assembly, because that's where their bread is buttered. Madam Speaker, let me talk about the interview process. We have the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. Madam Speaker, this is a statutory instrument, or this is law that relates to how Parliament shall conduct itself when it comes to constitutional and statutory appointments. And Madam Speaker, I do not agree with the committee on paragraph 13, page 16. Madam Speaker, I disagree with the committee when the committee makes reference to Standing Order 76 and 77. This interview should have been done in line with the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, the same instrument that the National Assembly has been using to vet the cabinet secretaries. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I say so is that the Public Appointments and Parliamentary Approval Act provides great detail on how this exercise should be conducted. Madam Speaker, that act says that Parliament shall focus on academic credentials, professional training, experience, personal integrity, and background of those who have been proposed to take up constitutional and statutory appointments. Being a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is a constitutional appointment. And so, Madam Speaker, how I wish the committee would have made reference to the Act of Parliament that is currently in existence rather than to Standing Order 76 and 77. That Act if it would be properly implemented, and not with the kind of mischief that we have seen in past vetting for cabinet secretaries. Madam Speaker, there's a question that has always come up, the question of net worth. And I can tell you that many a times when you are vetting nominees to the cabinet, Kenyans do not remember what they said they're going to do. Because there is one thing for them to aspire to do something, but there's also the established government policies. I have seen some cabinet secretaries say how they are going to be publicly spirited and how they are going to do things differently. But let's remember that there are already budgets that have been established. There's already a president who is in office. And so if you come with views that are at variance with those of government, the existing budgets, existing plans, and the personal views of the president, then you are just going to get frustrated. But the question of net worth is one that has animated the nation. I saw a computation of the net worth of the nominees that are currently before the House, without getting to the substance of the matter, to be 10 billion. And Kenyans are offended. Kenyans are offended. What is this magic that politicians play that makes them wealth that serious corporate organizations cannot make? Madam Speaker, before I got into politics, I was in the financial services sector. You will find an insurance company collects revenue of 4 billion Kenya shillings. And at the end of the day, it makes a profit of 50 million. A technical profit. That is once the premiums have been collected and the claims have been paid. And that is an institution that perhaps has employed 200 people, that has got branches throughout the country, that is integrated, that is creating a lot of opportunities and contributions to the GDP of this country, that is paying taxes. At the end of the day, they'll probably make 50 million as an underwriting profit. What is this thing that members of parliament do that generates them the kind of profits that even insurance companies cannot generate? And it is becoming an insult to the people of this country. The majority who cannot afford, the majority hustlers, we are building for them 2 million houses, 3 million houses, and then we are proclaiming that we are billionaires. How will a billionaire understand the needs and aspirations of that person whose biggest wealth is a 2 million house? Madam Speaker, if we were faithful to this process, even these applicants who are here, we should see an annexure showing how much they are paid in taxes. If I'm worth 300 million Kenya shillings, Madam Speaker, the taxes I pay must be different from the taxes paid by somebody else who's worth 31 million Kenya shillings. By someone else who just relies on a salary and has got nothing of value because their liabilities exceed their assets. Madam Speaker, another question that must be asked is a question of conflict of interest. In the substantive act that I've referred to, there is a question on conflict of interest. If my family is doing business, perhaps in the ICT sector, and then I get into government as a minister for ICT, I must disclose and I must lay out before Parliament how I'm going to prevent potential conflict of interest. In fact, in serious jurisdictions, once you get into certain constitutional and statutory positions, you put your assets or your wealth in a trust so that you are no longer directly involved. And so you are not compromised when it comes to procurement and provision of opportunities. We never ask those questions. Another question that we are required to ask under the Public Appointments Act is, have you ever been charged in a court of law? Madam Speaker, you don't hear those questions being asked. Another question we are supposed to be asked is, have you ever been advancedly mentioned in any report before Parliament? And Madam Speaker, all the 47 county governors have been adversely mentioned in reports before this House. And if we are taking seriously the reports of Parliament, which we must take seriously because we are Parliament, we must ask ourselves, during your tenure as governor for Tana River, did the Auditor General ever raise queries? And did the Public Accounts Committee bring a report to the House? And did the House adopt a report that recommended your investigation and prosecution? You find a lot of people in public offices. There are reports we have adopted here, but when we are vetting them, we never ask those questions. And that is why, Madam Speaker, I must insist that this process should not be done in accordance with Standing Order 76 and 77. This process should be done in accordance with the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. Let me finalize by saying that if we are going to see the annexures and satisfy ourselves that Madam Lynette Washiali Muganda and Mr. Mohamed Aden Abdi indeed were the best of the best, I will have no problem supporting this motion. But I will still need to be convinced to see the annexures, the CVs, the resumes, the minutes, and the proceedings of those meetings. Madam Speaker, the nominees, once they get to office, let them remember that they are there to represent the interests of county governments. They are not there to represent the interests of the executive. And that is why it is the Senate that has been called upon to nominate them. There are two nominees. There is one from the Parliamentary Service Commission, which is part of Parliament, but there's a specific nominee of the Senate to represent county governments. Let them remember they're representing county governments and not their stomachs and not the national executive. Let them focus on how they can help county governments to reduce their wage bill to go below 35%, because right now the general rate is 40% plus. Let them focus on building synergies with the county public service boards, County Assembly Service Board, Public Service Commission, so that we can have a better way of managing human resources in counties. Madam Speaker, the national government has given out a system called IPPD. IPPD, Integrated Personnel Payroll Management System. It only deals with the payroll aspect. Payroll is not HR management. Issues of recruitment, issues of appraisal, issues of promotion, issues of leave management, all those are not being managed in any system. And so we encourage these nominees to build those kind of synergies.
You have 1 minute to finish that sentence.
To build those synergies and to involve the Institute of Human Resource Management, the greatest resource that we have in county governments is a human resource. Let these two nominees go there knowing that they are going to look at the interests of county governments and not the interests of the presidency or of a broad-based government. Madam Speaker, my decision on support will be dependent upon the annexures.
Honorable Senators, we have that report which Senator Kajwang has indicated he does not have sufficient information, and thankfully Senator Halwale has offered some of the information, but ideally there is the formal way of bringing that information to the floor of the House so that all senators have an opportunity. But I want to hear a few senators what their take is on the status of that report, so that I make a verdict or give a direction on how we proceed with the report being used as a basis for debate. So I'll ask a comment from Senator Danson Mungatana, who was next, followed by Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki.
So
they are commenting on whether the sufficiency of the report, so that I give a direction.
I'm guided, Madam Speaker, and I assume that my time will still be there for debate.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am of a different view, Madam Speaker, and maybe this is not a popular view, but Madam Speaker, if you are at the very beginning of this afternoon session, the Honorable Senator Boni Halwale gave a statement. And in that statement, he gave a very lengthy presentation of the process that took place and of the report that was there. Madam Speaker, if my colleagues were there at the very beginning and they were listening, the information that was there, I'm convinced, is sufficient for us to proceed with the debate. And Madam Speaker, if we are not happy, if somebody is not sufficiently informed, we have the services of the Sergeant at Arms all over here who can give you any information you require. You just need to request. So my opinion, Madam Speaker, is that I may be wrong or I may be right, but I know for a fact that some constitutional
some constitutional office holders in the commission, the SRC, their term is coming to an end. And so we must not stagnate too much because there are 7 other appointees from other areas. We have been given 1 and we have 2 names. Looking at their qualifications, Madam Speaker, I may not know whether there was other things, but I am sufficiently informed, personally, I'm sufficiently informed to feel confident that when I make my remarks, they will be in support of a process that is very good. And Madam Speaker, the other thing is that if we are bringing to question a report by a committee, we must have some faith in what our colleagues are doing. Madam Speaker, the Finance Committee has been praised, and we have all the time praised them because of the work they are doing. I'm personally persuaded that the leadership which is there and the information they have given us, I have no reason to impugn unless there is other information that I don't have. But from where I stand, Madam Speaker, my humble opinion is that we proceed with this debate and conclude. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm a member of this Committee of Finance and Budget of the Senate, and I did participate in the whole process that resulted in this report. Madam Chair, first of all, Senator Shakila and I dissented on this report and recommendations. And even this morning, I did ask in the committee, I did make a comment that we had a dissenting opinion. Why is that dissenting opinion not captured in the report? Understanding order number 2 to 3, I think 5, says that a dissenting report, a dissenting opinion has to be captured in the report. A report having been appointed by a majority of senators, a minority or dissenting report may be appended to the report by any member or members of the committee. Madam Speaker, this has not been complied with. And as Senator Kajwanga said, the report is sketchy and doesn't show the true import of what transpired during the interviews. Chair, Mr. Speaker, now, it will not be prudent for us to continue the debate if those issues have not been considered. Thank you.
Senator Thangwa, it can't really be a point of order. There is no one on the floor unless it's a comment. All right, then you may comment on it.
Mr. Speaker, what you are witnessing now on the floor of this House today is one of the reasons why people are in the streets in this Republic of Kenya, because information is scanty, Mr. Speaker. We are not able to have information when vetting is going on. If you ask this country, you will only be told the vetting that was going on within this period was that of the CSs. The people probably did not have information. There was a vetting of these commissioners to represent the county government at SRC. But, Mr. Speaker, it is very sad for a member of this House to request for a postponement of a report that has been tabled. Yet these vetting were open to the public, were open to the members of this House, and anybody who wanted to find out the nitty-gritties could have attended these sittings, Mr. Speaker. Because I am commenting on this, it is not a point of order. Just the way you have commented, I'm commenting on it. We are commenting so that we assist the Speaker to make a decision. And I would request Mr. Speaker, to be heard in silence. We listen to the two gentlemen in silence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my issue is that once a report has been tabled in office, on the table of the Senate, every member should be given an opportunity to discuss. If you reject, you reject it. If you support it, you support it. But the issue of stepping down a report that has been put on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, it will go against our standing orders, Mr. Speaker. If you did not have the report, you had enough time to request for that report. And they're there, the public documents, Mr. Speaker. But it is my prayer, Mr. Speaker, that this report we continue debating, because we have so many people who will be having an opportunity to debate it. And I trust the committee, Mr. Speaker, that was mandated to do this kind of vetting. It is one of the committees that has been praised in this House, that has been doing their work diligently, Mr. Speaker. So I would go against those who are saying that we should start down the report, but I would urge you, Mr. Speaker, to rule that we continue the debate so that these people who have been nominated can have a chance to serve the people of this country.
Resume your seat, Senator Thangwa. You've been heard. Members, remember when Senator Thangwa indicated that he was rising on a point of order, I told him it was not. And unfortunately, Senator Mungatana had been asked to step down for an intervention that had come in. If that is exactly what had transpired prior to this intervention by Senator Thangwa. And so, honorable members, I am directing that even as we raise concerns about the content of this report and as to whether or not we will stand it down or we will defy it tomorrow, I will allow two more members to comment on it so that the chair issues a ruling as to the concerns that had been raised. I will give you members time to comment, but I need to just give directions that if we will ultimately have to make a decision as to how to treat this report, there isn't need for us to spend the entire of the afternoon when we saying the report is scanty and we need additional documents on the basis of the objections that Senator Kajwang had raised. And so what I'll do, honorable members, as I said, I'll give direction so that we are able to proceed in an orderly manner and deal with the report appropriately. So I will, I'm giving directions, and I want to give an opportunity to unlock this stalemate, particularly on the issue that had been raised to Senator Dr. Boni Halwale